Louisiana, Marshall, and Southern Miss. Championship or bust? It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Today's episode of Locked On Sunbelt is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. All right. When I say championship or bust, these are the three teams that have basically been atop of the standings all season long. And I'm one of those guys that come NCAA tournament time and conference tournament, certainly one bid conferences are different than the NCAA tournament. But when, say, Alabama, all right, when you're atop, the polls for most of the season, and you don't at least get to the Elite Eight, it's been a disappointing season. And I would tell you, I would think, and it's going to be tough because there's seems to be the same teams are atop the polls, right? But if Houston, Purdue, and Alabama don't get to the Final Four, it's been a tough season. All right, almost a wasted season. Now, winning it is something completely different. You don't know the matchups, injuries, whatever the case is, and plus, there's a good shot you're playing someone who's just as good as you are. So up until that time. So again, you got to get it to at least the Elite Eight, and in this case. And I would say in Alabama's case, and we still have, a month or so before the tournament. But if they don't make the Final Four, if they're number one seed and they don't make the Final Four, kind of a little bit of a wasted season, to be honest with you. Doesn't mean you don't enjoy it, but a little bit of a wasted season. Now, here's the thing about, that's different from a one bid league where it's definitely not a wasted season for two of the three teams. All right. For the Cajuns, it's going to be disappointing. Those are different, I would think. I'm sure the coaches are going to tell me differently. But when it's only one team, and athletic directors understand this, but when it comes to the Ragin Cajuns, and they've been to the NCAA tournament one time, that was in 2014, the Alfred Payton, Sean Long squad that I happen to be covering. They made a run in the Sun Belt Conference tournament. They weren't a top seed. They had to play at least 3 ball games. And got fortunate to win a couple of them at the end. They have to turn things around, and they probably have a good shot at doing that. Let's be honest. They probably have a good shot at doing this. They do not have the toughest of all schedules down the stretch compared to some other teams. They got 3 of the 4 games at home. They do have to go to James Madison. They have not played James Madison yet this year, but they do have a chance to, get their legs underneath them after, a draining and emotional loss to Southern Miss, and then got shut down in the second half against Troy, and they get a few days at home. They're playing ULM. They've already beaten ULM at home. They're a pesky bunch, although they've lost 3 in a row. They go to James Madison, then they finish up with Arkansas State and South Alabama, both at home. So 3 of the 4 games are at home. I'd be shocked if they didn't win at least 3 of those 4 ball games, and would not be surprised if they didn't win all 4 ball games, which gives them an outside shot of still claiming the number 1 seed. I am not going to try and figure out what the tiebreaker is if Southern Miss and the Cajuns finish tied atop the conference. I will wait until later because that stuff makes my head hurt. So they split the season series, so I'm not figuring out what the tiebreaker is just yet. I'll worry about that later. South Alabama will be interesting because they're playing better. They've won 5 out of 6. They gave the Cajuns all they could want, and they were without Mr. Double-Double. Kevin Samuel didn't even play in the ball game because he was a little banged up. Marshall Kearing had a big ball game, and for whatever reason, the Cajuns couldn't run away and hide. And, South Alabama gave them a good ball game. Throughout kind of a win and move on for Bob Marlin's crew. I would be surprised if South Alabama wins that ball game in Lafayette, but nonetheless, there was a tough ball game in Mobile. All right, so again, I think Bob Marlin's fighting for a job. I think he does. He did not get a contract extension yet. This was supposed to be the team. Even Coach Marlin admitted at Sunbelt Media Days in New Orleans that, people were picking us. He was referring to it, picking us because we got the most guys coming back. And so he's like, we don't know. Everybody doesn't know because all of the transfers coming in, Southern Miss and, Marshall and so forth. But to tell you how much the preseason means, or those preseason picks, all right, so Louisiana was picked number 1. No surprise. They've been up there all season long. They're number 2 now. Texas State was number 2. They are 11th in the conference. And they were the defending regular season champs. They're number 2. They are 11th in the conference right now. And South Alabama was picked 3rd. They're right above Texas State. They're 10th in the conference. And Southern Miss, who is first in the conference, was picked 13th. So the preseason poll doesn't mean anything. Obviously, Southern Miss and Marshall have well exceeded expectations. Marshall was picked in the middle of the pack. Having said all that, I would think that the Cajuns are, again, they always have this rivalry with Georgia State, who is, they've taken a little bit of a step back. And so it was always Georgia State going, and the Cajuns couldn't get past Georgia State. And one year, Jonathan Stove got hurt, and they got beat by UTA. And actually, would you know it, Scott Cross didn't win it that year, and he got fired. That's how he's ended up in Troy. UTA didn't win it, and they'd had enough of winning 20 ball games and not getting to the tournament when it's really, really tough when it's a one bid league. So I would think all the pressure is on Louisiana to get this done. So yes, it is championship or bust to get the Cajuns into the NCAA tournament. The other two, I think, are different. All right. And I think one, even the two, Marshall and Southern Miss, are different in what's going on with the program. All right. And we will get into that right after this. I tell you all about FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes that are hit. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, so when I say championship or bust, it's championship or bust for the Cajuns. They're in it to win it. All right, not that the other teams aren't, but I would think it would. I don't think it would happen, but I guess I wouldn't be totally shocked if the Cajuns don't get to the NCAA tournament if they make a change. All right, I don't think they should. I like Bob Marlin. I think he's a really good coach, but he hasn't been back to the NCAA tournament in a decade. All right. The other two, Dan D'Antoni is Marshall. Jay Ladner, I think he's working on a contract extension. He's in year number 4. The thing is with Jay, he took over in 2020, COVID year. And so it's just been, everything has changed from the COVID year was incredible. Then you got transfer portal and NIL coming in, and is, tiebreakers make my head hurt. You got to believe, all of that is making the coaches' heads hurt. So you can understand that, it has not quite gone the way that Southern Miss had hoped for up until this point. Now, they're like having the best turnaround maybe, in college basketball, maybe history. Southern Miss has 23 wins heading into the game against South Alabama on Thursday here in Mobile, and they had 26 losses last year. They were 7-26 last season. I'm not even sure how Jay Ladner held on to his job for last year. 26 losses. But now they're 23-4, coming off a huge win against the Cajuns last Thursday, did they beat? I was going to say ULM, but they did. They beat ULM. All right, a pesky ULM team. They were actually down at half. So I was going to say ULM, and it ends up being ULM. Right? They had like 8,000 in the stands against the Cajuns. Right? Like they're, I'm not sure they had broken the 5,000 mark yet this season, and they, broke 5, 6, 7, and 8, almost 8,100, I believe, against the Ragin Cajuns. And then they had like another 45 or 5,000 against ULM in what was a bad weather day. I don't think it was dangerous. I just think it was, kind of crappy and cold out and rainy and wet as well. So people could just, watch it if they're streaming. So they didn't draw quite as much, but still pretty good for especially what Southern Miss had been. So this is a huge season for Jay Ladner and Southern Miss. Don't make any mistake about it. They'll be just as disappointed if they don't get to the NCAA tournament. If it's Southern Miss and the Cajuns, or Southern Miss and Marshall, or Marshall and the Cajuns, everyone's going to be disappointed if they don't make it. All right. South Alabama's going to be disappointed if they don't make it. Arkansas State's going to be disappointed if they don't make it. If you don't make it, you're disappointed. All right. However, what Southern Miss has done, and now into the Sun Belt, turning the program around, they can take a deep breath. They can look around. They could say, can you imagine if we can get 5,000 to 6,000 in this building every game? Is it going to matter if they go to the NCAA tournament and lose one game? Not that they couldn't win a ball game. They could certainly go into the NCAA tournament and win a ball game. It'd be nice if, maybe, the Sun Belt wasn't a 15 or 16 seed or had to play a play-in game or something along those lines, right? I mean, technically, Southern Miss could be, they got 4 games left and then win 3. They could technically be 30-4 as a Sun Belt champion. You'd hope they'd avoid, the 15 or 16 or the play-in seed, right? Like, they could be a 13 or 12 seed even. Give them, they'd be ripe to pull off an upset 5-12 in the NCAA tournament. But because, of where the program was, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously you'd have a lot of excitement now, and people are going to remember, what happened, when they're buying season tickets the next year. But also, fans are not necessarily level-headed, but Southern Miss has a, this rich tradition that is, they're maybe because Ole Miss and Mississippi State have not had the championship pedigree as the Alabamas and the Auburns, and Southern Miss has, not necessarily in basketball, but been really good in football. Have actually been good in basketball, right? Scott Watkins went over all those plus 20 win seasons that they had when he came on last week. And, you just, only one can go. So I just think that what Jay Ladner has done is, really impressive. I mean, obviously, depending on how it happens, they'll be devastated if they don't go to the NCAA tournament. The one thing I've noticed about players, although they are devastated in the moment, athletes understand better than us fans, right? That losing is part of it. All right. We really have no idea what student athletes put into it or the professional athletes put into it, and how much sacrifice they're away from their families, right? If it's the NFL or the NBA, maybe on Christmas, I know they're well paid, but they are making sacrifices, basically to entertain us. And we never quite understand what it is. They understand that as much fun as winning is and as painful as losing is, they know one team wins and one team loses. So I would think that Southern Miss has got to be absolutely thrilled on how the season has gone and turning things around. And you compare that to the Cajuns, who are expected to do this. Southern Miss wasn't. Whereas Marshall, we'll talk about Marshall now, they were in the middle of the pack, but they had lost 21 ball games last year. So Southern Miss had lost 26. Marshall lost 21. They've already won 21 ball games. It's an amazing turnaround. And Dan D'Antoni is building something heading in the right direction in Huntington, West Virginia, Whereas, again, maybe we can, take a deep breath. Let's see what Marshall was here the last couple of years, because we saw what Southern Miss was. Let's see. Again, Marshall was 12-21 last season, 20-21. So that's the year. That's really what the COVID year was. All right. They were 15-7. And then 20 is when COVID shut it down. They actually finished really strong, winning, let's see here, 5 of 6 and 7 of 9 ball games. They finished 15-7, and then the conference tournament was they won 1 ball game in the conference tournament, and then the rest of the season was canceled. So they've been okay, for the last handful of years. Let's see what they did in 18 and 19, then went to the CIT. They won 19 and 19-14. So they have not been that bad, but obviously last season was not great. So, it is different for each one of these teams between the Cajuns, who are expected to be there. Southern Miss was absolutely, no one thought in their wildest dreams. I'm not even sure Southern Miss thought they were going to be this good. I'm trying to get Jay Ladner on the show to see, when did you realize the team was going to be good? I mean, was there a game that you played that thought, we got something here? When did it click to you? I mean, I know coaches always want to believe, right? They always, I always think we're good. I mean, they started out, they beat Vanderbilt. That's a good win, right? That's a Power 5 win. God, I mean, they won. They started out the season, 3-6-8-1, 11-1. They lost to UNLV. They beat Troy and App State. I would like to know what game it was. I mean, they beat Vanderbilt in the second game of the season. So that's a nice way. Maybe he realized it right away. It's like, you never quite know in practice. And then you play a couple of ball games and you're like, oh, we're pretty good, right? They bounced back well after losses to Louisiana and to Marshall and haven't lost since. They've won 9 in a row. So it's going to be a great tournament. I hope to be down there. All right. I did that again. Hope to be in Pensacola for the tournament to check out all the games and to give you my takes from Pensacola. Plus, maybe we pick up some good bourbon in Florida. A little bit easier to obtain in that state than it is in this state. All right. Thanks very much for tuning in to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Thanks so much for subscribing. We are starting to pick up some steam. We do have to get into the baseball. That's getting underway this weekend. Softball's already underway. Looking forward to covering it all. And again, we only have 2 more weeks of college basketball's regular season. We will preview the matchups. Georgia Southern's got a brutal weekend with games against, I think, was it Marshall and Southern Miss? Southern Miss is coming to Mobile on Thursday. And can South Alabama stay hot? They've won 5 out of 6. So, and I think they got like a 4-game homestand going on. So they're in, they got a shot to make a little bit of a run as well. All right. Again, I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Thanks very much for tuning in to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.